Hi, I'm Toine. Welcome to my kitchen. If you're new to this channel, I focus on cooking food from my home country, the Netherlands, and some of its former colonies, such as Indonesia. What we're making today are called bitterballen. It is a typical Dutch snack. I really haven't found them anywhere else. So when I moved to the United States, I had to figure out how to make them myself because I couldn't buy them. My mom didn't make these from scratch. Growing up, these were special treats because it was snack food and it wasn't considered a proper meal. But every so often, Dad would go to one of the local snack bars and pick them up, or my mom would have a bag of them in the freezer from the grocery store and fry them up fresh for us. And we would be allowed to eat it at the coffee table watching TV, which was rare because we always ate dinner at the dining room table. Then as I got older and in college started going to bars, I realized that these little bitterballen were one of the favorite bar foods in the Netherlands. They would be served next to a cold beer or something stronger, and the contrast between the drink and this crunchy ball filled with gravy and soft tender meat was just perfect. Okay, it's time to make them. You need half of the ragout from the recipe that I posted last week called pastijtjes. I'll put a link right up here. You will also need some parsley. So we went to the store and we bought both parsley and cilantro. We cleaned it, well, my wife cleaned it. We put it in the fridge and I did not write on the bag which one is which. So I had to go taste, figure out which one was the parsley and which one was the cilantro. It's a good thing I like both, because if you're one of those people who doesn't like cilantro, having to taste it to figure it out would probably not be a pleasant experience. You will also need gelatin, so a tablespoon of gelatin. I used powdered beef gelatin. Anything unflavored will work. And you'll need a quarter cup of water. We're going to use the water to bloom the gelatin in, so make sure that that is room temperature and not hot or cold, because it will prevent the gelatin from blooming. Let's put these away for now and I'll start chopping the parsley. Pull off all the leaves. Time to chop. First a rough chop and then let's cut it nice and small. No large leaves left. And you want to use fresh. You don't want to use dried parsley. It's just not the same. Grab the parsley and put it in a bowl. All right, next we have to bloom the gelatin. So take your tablespoon of gelatin and add it to your quarter cup of room temperature water. Just let it sit. The water will get all absorbed into the gelatin. It will take about 10 minutes or so. Now we're ready to warm up the ragout and add the parsley through it. All right, so we want to just on a medium heat, gently heat through this thick mass of ragout. It's going to take a little bit of time. While it's heating up, let's add in the parsley. And all of a sudden, there's a little spring of color. Before we add the gelatin, we have to make sure that the temperature of the mixture is between 120 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything higher than that will cause the gelatin to lose its gel powers. Let's take a look what temperature we're at right now. We're only at 76. We will keep heating it up. Now, of course, you can also just make fresh ragout using the recipe in the pastijtjes and just use all of it for bitterballen. You'll end up with a lot more, which, trust me, most people won't mind. And all this stirring, the parsley really gets mixed through it. Okay. I'm going to call it good. So now your gelatin is turned into something like this, and you're going to mix it through. until it is fully dissolved and melted. You can see it starts melting. So I just keep stirring until everything is through there. What we're trying to do is get this to really be able to hold its shape once we put it in the fridge for a few hours. I've turned off the flame because there was plenty of residual heat left in the sauce. All right, I think we're good. Okay, now that we have mixed the gelatin through as well as the parsley, it's time to put it in a shallow dish and put it in the fridge for 4 hours. So let me get started with that. Pour it out. And make sure that you spread it to be as thin as possible. Okay, empty. Good, can put that away. For the kitchen crew later, and kitchen crew means me and my wife. Scrape all of the beef from the spoon. We call this pollepel in Dutch, just in case you want to learn some Dutch words. And as it's starting to set, you can start to see that there is already some gelling happening. So now that we have done this, I'm going to put some saran wrap on top of it, press it on there, make sure that it is all the way touching everything, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge for 4 hours. And then we go on to the next step, which will include deep frying. So fun. The ragout has rested in the fridge for 4 hours after we mixed through the gelatin and the parsley. I'm going to use an ice cream scoop to make sure that all the balls are approximately the same size, and we will be making a breading station. I will wear food-safe gloves while handling all this because it does get a little bit messy. And the first thing we need is some breadcrumbs. I'm using panko breadcrumbs. You can also just use any style of breadcrumb you like. I have used Italian because that's what I had on hand. You'll need about 150 grams of that, so that is half of this container. Okay. You will also need 2 eggs to make the egg wash with, and some salt, as well as a tablespoon of milk. So this is going to make the egg wash that we're going to use, and the breadcrumbs we will use to put on the balls first, then the egg wash, and then the breadcrumbs again, so they'll be double breaded. Let's get started. First thing we have to do is crack the eggs and add them to a shallow dish that we are going to use. So let's start with that. Okay, now that we have cracked both eggs, it is time to add just a pinch of salt and a tablespoon of milk. Now it is time to mix all of this together. Just be careful that you don't make a mess. And this is going to help the second coating of breadcrumbs to stick to the first coating. The method of making bitterballen is shape it in ball shapes, about ping pong size, then cover them in breadcrumbs, dredge them through the egg wash, and then cover them in breadcrumbs again. So, breadcrumbs next. I'll use a little bit deeper dish for that, and I need about half of this container. We have our breadcrumbs in place, our egg wash in place. First, now let's go shape balls. So I'll put this to the side. I'm going to put on some gloves. These are food-safe gloves, the kind of gloves that have no powder on them. Fill an ice cream scoop, kind of shape it into a ball, drop them into the breadcrumbs. Same here. I try to just use my left hand to shape the balls and my right hand to use the ice cream scoop. And we are not a factory, so it's artisanal to have them not all be exactly the same size. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll these in the breadcrumbs. And once I've rolled them into the breadcrumbs, I can now shape them like a ball between two hands, because at least there's a little bit of dryness on the outside. And then I'm going to put them in the egg wash. Crumbs, ball, egg wash. It's like my Bitterball mantra. So now you roll them through the egg wash. Make sure it is all covered. And after that, drop them back into the breadcrumbs. I'll repeat this until all of this has been completely breaded. This is when you don't really want to handle them too much anymore. You want to just put them on the plate. As you can see, I've finished making the bitterballen, and they are larger than I was planning them to be, but that's okay. They'll just take a little longer to fry, but they will still be equally delicious. But when you go to a bar in the Netherlands, they are not quite this big. But again, no real problem. So let's go put these in the fridge. Okay, we're going to leave the bitterballen in the fridge for at least an hour before we start deep frying them. Deep frying is one of those things in the kitchen that you cannot walk away from. You have to pay attention to. For that reason, I like to put everything I need within arm's reach. So what are those things? Well, a spider to lower the bitterballen into the oil and take them out later. A cookie sheet lined with paper towel and then a rack on top of it to drain the bitterballen after they come out of the deep fryer. I like to use a cast iron Dutch oven for deep frying, and I use a 5-quart one. That is just big enough for me that if I fill it halfway up, there is enough oil for me to deep fry a bitterballen in. It's important that you have a large vessel with tall walls because you don't want the oil to boil over the edges. You're going to deep fry these at 350 degrees. For that reason, you want to use oil that A, has no flavor or very little flavor, and B, a smoke point of at least 375, preferably 400 or higher. I'm using grapeseed oil. I like it as a high smoke point. I use it for seasoning my cast iron pans, but you can use canola oil as well. Our oil is almost at temperature, so I'm going to put some of the balls in the spider. I have just added 5 balls, and we are going to set a timer for 3 minutes. The temperature of the oil will slowly start dropping, so you may want to increase the heat a little bit to get it back up there. And there isn't one of those, oh, if they're floating, they're done things here. It is all about the color. Now, the good thing is that the insides are fully cooked, so it's not like you have a danger of having something here that is raw or not yet edible if it doesn't hit some sort of internal temperature. We can actually just cook it until the outside looks good. And while this is happening, one of the things that we often do is I will fry a big batch, and then I will put a lot of them in the freezer. And the ones in the freezer I will then reheat in the oven. The other thing you can do is you can freeze them as they are right now, not yet fried. And then all you have to do is fry them after you take them out of the freezer. And you can actually fry them straight from the freezer. Just be careful that big a drop in temperature, and there's probably going to be some moisture in there from the freezer. You want to make sure that your Dutch oven is not filled too much, because it will bubble up way more than it is right now. So 2 different methods. I prefer the oven because that way if we just want to have some on a weeknight, I don't have to worry about putting oil in a big cast iron pan and getting it to temperature and waiting for it to fry. I just pop them in the oven. Let's take a look at what the color is. Okay, so they're not quite golden brown yet, so we can leave them in here. Here on the right, I have a cookie sheet with paper towel in it, and then an upside down rack. Trick I learned from Alton Brown. So this way the fried food doesn't lay in its own fat. If you put it straight on the paper towel, there's a little bit of a barrier in between. Once the oil gets dirty, they will start cracking open. So it's important that you skim out some of those little pieces of breading that are now floating around in the oil to make sure that you don't have dirty oil for the next round. They're done. So make sure that all the oil drips off and then put them on the rack. This was about 5 minutes of frying, and they are the right temperature. After this one is done, I am going to turn off the cameras and we will just fry them up. So we are done frying all the bitterballen, and it is time to eat. So I took one of the ones I took out of the oil the earliest so that it's already cooled down. If you are frying these, don't pop them in your mouth straight out of the fryer. Not only will the outside be hot, the inside will be like lava. So very careful eating these. Typically in a bar, they will actually let them cool off a little bit before they hand them over to you because they are so scalding hot. So I am just eating one by itself with a knife and fork. In a bar, you just have a toothpick or a small little fork and you just pop them in your mouth. They're also a little bit smaller than this. So let's put some mustard on the plate. And let's cut it in half. I don't know if you can hear this, but that crust definitely makes a noise when you cut into it. And the inside is warm. There's some steam coming off of it, and it is nice and soft. So dip it in some mustard, and here we go. Eet Smakelijk. Boy, that brings me back. The outside is perfectly crispy. The inside is hot and smooth with little pieces of meat through it. Absolutely, absolutely scrumptious. The mustard cuts the fat from the frying just enough. Great combination. You can eat this several ways. In a bar, you would get a plate of these and you would eat them while drinking a beer or something stronger. In a restaurant, they may serve these on a plate with your main course or even as an appetizer. And oftentimes, you can also get it on a sandwich where you take one or two of these balls, you smash them on the bread, typically a roll, and then a little mustard on it and eat it. Absolutely, absolutely delicious. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like button and the subscribe button. That way you'll get to see the next video I make automatically. Thank you. Until next time.